Hey everyone, Eric here with Fast Slow Motion, joined today by Aakriti and Martha from the project team, as well as Tim Pickett, CEO and founder of Kindly MD. But Tim, when we met you a year ago, it was Utah Therapeutic. So tell me a little bit about Utah Therapeutic, Kindly MD. What are you guys up to? What's your business?
Thanks, Eric. And thanks for inviting me to be a part of this. We started a healthcare company back in 2019, and I started seeing patients who actually needed access to medical cannabis in Utah. And a lot of those patients were using opioid medications. And I practiced medicine in GI surgery and trauma for 7 years and in emergency medicine. And so I started just seeing patients who needed access, who were managing other medications. And that system and that clinic just grew and grew over 2020 during COVID and 2021 to the point where I needed to kind of legitimize the system and the data we were collecting. I was collecting a ton of patient healthcare data and also data that we were using to market. But the systems really weren't integrated. And so that led me to kind of go towards a Salesforce solution.
And Martha, you've been involved with this project since day one, Aakriti as well. Kind of tell us, when Tim came to us, how did we think about his problem? What sort of solutions did we design for him?
Yeah, I'll kick us off. What we originally did was just do our FSM or fast slow motion foundation, right? We did some basic configuration where we really built a scalable solution for Tim and his team. And then from there, we really did some really cool customizations around some unique functionality that I'll let Aakriti share with us as far as meeting some of the needs that Tim and his team had.
Yeah, absolutely. I can add to it. After we had a solid foundation, we really worked on a couple of cool things, and I want to highlight maybe 2 or 3. So the first one's being able to capture the medical card of a patient, the medical marijuana card, within Salesforce. That was a big win. So that any qualified medical provider, we call QMP. I'm not a medical person, but I learned this through the project. So there was something cool. So these qualified medical providers could really create clinical encounters within Salesforce, which was a record of the patient's physical health, any kind of diagnosis, etc. And then also refer to any of the historical medical cards as well as the active medical cards. We were at a later point when we enhanced this functionality, we were also able to get this clinical encounter process into an experience site where the qualified medical providers could, get the patient details, enter any clinical encounter information, and then drop it into Salesforce.
Yeah, and to add to that, there wasn't a solution like with this type of medicine practice and the marketing side that we were doing. So we were blogging and emailing a bunch of like a contact list, that type of stuff. There's a solution for it. If you go to healthcare, there's a solution for big EHR systems or electronic medical records. But what there wasn't in the alternative medicine space was something that would be HIPAA compliant and allow us to track the patient visit, allow us to track these outside expiration dates and the Utah Department of Health, like in this legal way, and then combine those two things together. And so that's what we designed through Fast Slow Motion. So they stood up the Health Cloud and the Salesforce, like Martha was describing, the typical stand up, which we can talk about in a minute, but I underestimated like the scope of work that just that piece is. And then we designed and implemented this, through like Aakriti's team. We designed and implemented a really customized patient flow. So it takes the patient clear from the introduction and finding our service, clear through that scheduling and integrating other systems into the scheduling piece, the communication piece, and then the providers here in Utah, like Aakriti said, they're called QMPs, licensed prescribers, who then chart right inside of Salesforce, inside of that Health Cloud. And then we can then track that medical card and its expiration date. And, we see thousands of patients. And so we have to have extremely accurate data, secure data, has to be very customized as far as the presentation of that to the providers. And Fast Slow Motion was key in organizing all of that into Health Cloud and Salesforce, and then being able to build it.
Tim, I'll say the same thing about your team, or I guess the collaboration between the two teams and kind of the agile approach that we took, I think really helped us, both teams, right, be able to understand the requirements, right, what you guys actually really needed out of the system. And then we were able to iterate on that on a weekly cadence and really get to a better solution by the end of it. But your team has been phenomenal to work with. And we always kind of brag on y'all and say, it's fun to work on projects with y'all because there's some really great innovative ideas that we get to bring to life.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also
Thank you.
because you guys had a clear vision of what you wanted to accomplish, that kind of helped us get our process streamlined. You guys made our job easier. And then the other thing I want to highlight is your team has exceptional technical skills, right? So we had this whole bunch of data. We had patient data, medical card data, historical encounters, sales screens. We had a bunch of data. And Fast Slow Motion was able to provide minimum guidance, and the Kindly MD team, the Utah team, was able to bring all of those data into Salesforce. So you guys are great partners and with great technical skills, which is rare.
I think that it's you give us a lot of credit, but we went into this thinking we had more acumen over the system than we, I think, truly did. And I think working with an implementation service like Fast Slow Motion, where you're meeting with us every week and you're available in real time through the tools that we have to communicate with each other, we certainly couldn't have done this without you, because we may have understanding in healthcare IT data, and we might have understanding in marketing data, but we didn't have any idea how to build the system without having that Fast Slow Motion infrastructure. So the things that I really liked about working with Fast Slow Motion were right out of the gate, you were upfront and you really tried to understand. We spent a lot of time up front trying to understand the way this would flow, right? Because as an outsider, I don't understand how the process would go. I know exactly what I want it to be like when I'm sitting there with a patient and I'm talking to the patient and I want to chart this way and put the medications in and do this and do that. But I can't, I have no idea what that looks like inside of Salesforce. So we spend a significant amount of time in the beginning, right, laying that out. And once we got that done, boom, we kind of clipped along.
Yeah, we really did. And then we were able to bring in, when you had that vision, we were able to bring in the different developers, architects to help support Aakriti and the project team to make that vision come to life.
Yeah, and including the marketing cloud team, right?
That too, right.
Yep, because we built that after, right? And we were on a pretty limited budget. At least on my end, it felt like we were on a somewhat of a limited budget. So we were having to do this stepwise approach in order to build this. So I think that it was pretty efficient as well in the way it ended up happening.
Martha, I'm hearing a lot of complexity here, a grand vision, that's something that we were able to come together with Tim and execute. Talk about the agile project management methodology and kind of why that works great for a big complex problem like this.
Yeah, I don't think any other method would have worked and gotten us to the place where we ended up. So with all of our projects, but especially this one, we take that agile iterative approach, which means that we really work on a weekly sprint basis. I think that hopefully, Tim, you'll agree with this, is that you don't know what you don't know at the beginning of a project, right? We've got a pretty good understanding of what the problem is, what we're trying to solve. But if we're able to give that team, any client, kind of the understanding and the basis and that foundation, each call that we're on, so we do a weekly call with any client, which we go over, this is what we accomplished last week, this is what we need your feedback on, this is what we're working on for next week. This allows us to not only give the client understanding of what's being built, but also it helps them to ask better questions, to say, hey, we're on the right track here. We need to pivot though on this one and move in this direction. So that agile iterative approach really gets us to a better solution. It might not be linear, but it definitely gets us to a better solution by the end of it.
It's not linear, and it's not, it accelerates through the process, right? So setting expectations in the beginning, I mean, anybody who ends up watching this, my recommendation is you set your expectations that this will ramp up in speed, and like the client's ability to understand the project increases exponentially over time. But at the beginning, clients, I would assume, not in your business, but I would assume that you have frustration with your clients in the beginning because they can't see, they know what they want it to look like in the end, but they can't see the process very clearly over the first couple of weeks. So I spent a lot of time in the beginning really understanding that process. And I think that's pretty key to the agile method. If you used a different method and you tried to get it all out on paper in the beginning, then it just would end up in frustration. Because it didn't end up looking exactly like I had envisioned it on day one, right? It functioned because the system works in a different way, right?
Yeah. And you had done a great job during the sales process to kind of communicate what you were looking for and what you wanted out of the system. And then one of the things I love about being on the delivery side of the house at FSM is that we meet with our sales team internally to gather all of that information. So it's not just wasted during the sales process. We actually get to get all of that information, that discovery work that's done at the beginning. So we're starting a steps ahead, and then we get to dive right in. But to your point, Tim, those first few weeks, we're really doing a lot of information gathering. We're asking a lot of questions where it might feel somewhat slower, but then to your point, I think we can ramp up and move pretty quickly after that.
Yeah, we got some really good movement once both sides really understand what the project, like what the next step is for the next week, you know? I move really fast in business and everything. And I pride myself on maybe the technical ability to dig in and understand a little bit of the background things. And I think maybe business owners are like this, some of them, and maybe they hire some IT people to help, but being able to understand it, or I should say, having fast slow motion, being patient and explaining it, and then explaining it again. And then you have those resources you would always send, right? And you're communicating with Salesforce directly, and so you're mediating the process, because if I can speak to the sales process of Salesforce and Health Cloud, I would say that what I was sold was slightly different than what we implemented and ended up with. And that Salesforce was not explaining that in a way that Fast Slow Motion did. So that relationship we built in the beginning in the sales process actually was really critical to the success of the project, and not having me be frustrated, or businesses, I guess. I can't speak for everybody, but I'm assuming, again, that businesses get frustrated with the handoff if that handoff isn't handled the way like we did it.
Yeah, if expectations aren't properly set, then it can be confusing. It can be a little bit frustrating for sure. So good to hear that we did that part pretty well. So Tim, you've grown this business. You're doing really well. Kindly MD is continuing to scale. What advice do you give to other entrepreneurs who may be looking at similar challenges, scaling a business, tackling the problems like we tackled together?
Patience, I would say. Be patient and do your due diligence. Write it down. Write your process or what you want down, because if you can explain it in written form, somebody like Martha and Aakriti can take that, and then they can then implement that or show you where the weaknesses or the strengths are in the program. Not taking time to understand the scope of what you actually want to do is it's just a huge hurdle that I would recommend against. And on the flip side, if you do it and you can get all of that written out, then the success will be easier and the process will be easier. It will still change through the project, but having a roadmap, a strategy of how we get from here to the finished product or what we want to accomplish, I think is critical, especially if you want a scalable model. The second thing I would say is when you do that, you're going to want, I want to look for solutions that are not, we built some really custom solutions. And as I have scaled, we have found that there are things that we can take that were out of the box in the Health Cloud, like in the Health Cloud ecosystem. And we want to bring those into our custom solutions. And those are going to be critical for scaling, right? You don't always have to build the custom solution right out of the box, right? Mm-hmm. We have found that getting started, and I guess this is kind of the third piece of this, getting started with something that is kind of out of the box and using it for a few months, 6 months, a year, and then building on that for scalability and budget, keeping yourself in budget, keeping yourself on time. And again, back to this, having patience in the process, I could not emphasize that piece enough, because now that we know about it, we have 70 Salesforce licenses, and we have a team of people making 5,000, 6,000 phone calls a month and seeing 2,000 patients a month and wanting to acquire other data sets and integrate those into our system. We couldn't do that had we not had a year of experience with Salesforce, but we also wouldn't know what to do if we didn't know to reach out to Martha and say, hey, we want to do this next. Is this possible? And so now we're set up for success.
And Martha, internally, we call that crawl, walk, run, right? It's think big, implement small, get a good foundation and grow from there.
I didn't even know that's what I mean. I remember you saying that in the beginning, but I couldn't remember it. And here it is. Oh, well, it's like you guys do this for a living.
Crazy, right?
Yeah.
Tim, I'll never forget that document that you sent over. That was like, hey, here's everything in my brain. This is how we want to eventually, this is the big vision. And that helped us tremendously be able to, from the very start, right, understand exactly what you were looking for and then be able to implement it. I'll never forget that long document that you sent over. It was very helpful.
Yeah,
and I'm a prolific writer. When it comes to the team and the business, I mean, we have strategy documents and I write, because I think that if you can clearly write down, you're organized, people understand it. And if it's not written down in medicine, it didn't exist. It doesn't happen. So we're constantly taught, you got to write it down, got to be specific and write it down.
Yeah, and one critical thing to the successful collaboration, we've had 3 successful engagements, right, was that there was one focal person from your team who was responsible to getting right people on the table, right? So for example, for one of our engagement, we had Adrian. So we would pour all of our conversations through him, and then he would bring in the right people on the table if need be. I think that's super helpful instead of trying to reach like multiple people at the same time, you know, you have one focal person. I think that really contributed to a successful engagement as well.
I agree. I think in the very beginning, we learned that in the first engagement, we learned how that didn't work. You know, passing it off to different people doesn't really work. You definitely have to have a lead person who owns the project on both sides and then disseminates that information. And like you say, includes the people that they need to include, but follows right along.
Yeah, and absolutely. In terms of knowledge transfer as well, right? We hand over all of the training materials or any kind of documentation to the person, and then the person can actually take it and run with it and, you know, build. Even in the future, they can build on their own.
Oh, we've built a lot. The training documents that you had and the flows that we built inside the system have led to us being able to do a lot of additional customization underneath that. You know, have we built a whole new system? No, but we've added things and tweaked things on our own because we were taught, you know, we were taught how to do it. We were taught how to do it right. We use the sandbox. We then move it over and implement it, right? And we look for ways, frankly, you know, we look for ways to save ourselves money on engagements, but we don't have to hire you know, an astronomically expensive Salesforce implementation team because we know we have one at the ready with you.
Absolutely.
The nice thing that, yeah, go ahead, Aakriti.
Sorry, I meant all throughout the project, our goal is to make sure that you guys are self-sustainable in the long run. So it's like music to hear that from you.
For sure. And the nice thing is too, Tim, you know, when we pick up, hopefully in the next engagement, we go back to our project management tool and we have everything documented and laid out of, hey, this is what we built and this is why, so that we know for next time, if there's tweaks to it, further configuration, we just have all that historical context so we don't have to recreate the wheel each time.
Absolutely.
Tim, thanks again for your time today. Any final thoughts that prospective clients might need to know about potentially working with Fast Slow Motion?
You know, not really. I think I loved to work with you. We have, you know, we've had the 3 engagements. We've talked about more, and I don't really think about going outside of Fast Slow Motion now that we have a relationship. I think it's much harder to hire once you get into the ecosystem in Salesforce or Health Cloud and you have an arrangement and a relationship with Fast Slow Motion. I don't think people will go outside of that because it would be so much harder for me and our company. You know our system. You've always been fair. You're always working it out, you know, and trying to solve our problems and teach us how to fish, essentially, so that we don't have to, you know, we're not recreating things on our own. I think if you're a prospective client looking at a Health Cloud or a Salesforce implementation, Fast Slow Motion has a great system. They communicate very well. They take your feedback and they don't ignore you. They address feedback, and week after week, they make progress.
Tim, thanks for that. And congratulations on all your success. Where can people go to learn more about Kindly MD?
Oh yeah. If you need, we are going to build, the goal is to build the largest network of integrated alternative and traditional healthcare clinics across this nation to end the opioid epidemic. Okay. And it's at KindlyMD, kindlymd.com. We integrate behavioral health into every patient care plan. We prescribe medicine. We use alternative medicine. Essentially everything that is legal and is safe to use for patients. We're trying to help people get off of opioids and treat their conditions. It's exciting. And yeah, it's at kindlymd.com. You can come see us. We're only in Utah now, but hopefully soon enough we'll be in whatever area you need help.
I love it. That's real impact, Tim, and a really great vision you have. So thank you for everything that you do. Thank you for your partnership with us.
My pleasure. Thank you.